Hello, Abdallah. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you for inviting me over to the cyber series interview series. Thank you.
My pleasure. It's good seeing you again. It's been a while since I was in DC, so good to see you. So, Abdallah, please, let's talk about the economic landscape in Lebanon. And I know your research and your passion for stirring economic growth and helping us better understand choices that can be made to improve the lives for all in your country. Our listeners are excited to learn from you today.
Yes, thank you, Tim. I will just go very briefly over if you want, a very brief introduction about the economy of Lebanon. It's relatively small in comparison to the United States economy, if you want, really, really tiny. The GDP of Lebanon, the size of the economy was around $55 billion. And it shrunk in the last 3 years to half of that,
Mm,
approximately. And you can imagine all the consequences of that on the standard of living and on the potential of the country. Lebanon, though, is a very rich country with its natural resources that it has. The beauty of the country itself is a big attraction for many people around the world. And over years and years and years, we have accumulated so much if you want, wealth of knowledge and a kind of know-how on how to appreciate food and to
mm,
bring actually this kind of gastronomy from everywhere in the world and putting it together. And so we have our own identity when it comes to food. So when you speak about Lebanon, the first thing that comes to your mind is basically Lebanese food. And we're very proud of that. And that's by itself is a big asset for the country itself. And we're also a country that has very unique and special human resources
mm.
that actually have played a key role in the development of the country and in many other countries around the world. So yes, Lebanon is struggling at the moment, but definitely for a little period of time, for the right time and the right timing to come, Lebanon will be actually growing and booming again.
Great. Thank you, Abdallah. So, as we look at the economic crisis from both a macro and a micro perspective, we'd love to have you elaborate briefly on the spillover effect on the functioning of government entities uh, and embassies, of course, as you serve in your capacity at the embassy in DC.
I will just briefly, I mean, there have been so many reports that was written about Lebanon and the crisis, and I
Mm,
would like to say just one very important point for everyone who is listening and actually watching this video, that the exchange rate of the country is actually extremely important for the growth and for the standard of living. I'm not saying something really new here, but what I'm trying to say is that one of the main reasons why Lebanon have been prosperous at some time is basically the stable exchange rate we had. And one of the main reasons why Lebanon actually had that big crisis is because of the stable exchange rate we had.
mm,
So the same problem, the same solution created the main problem. We had an exchange rate that was really, really, really undervalued, and that actually have caused so much money to leave the country at some point, and we were living beyond our means at some point as well. So it's always good to understand the circumstances and the consequences and adjust the exchange rate based on that, so that the suffering that you have in the short term could always be better than the suffering you could have in the long term.
mm,
Uh, in terms of so the crisis that was created and that actually the Lebanon suffered from the last 3 years have definitely been affecting the whole country and also government functioning. As any public administration, the embassies around the world play a key role in the functioning of the Lebanese government and the service they provide to Lebanese citizens and other people around the world. And we've been actually in my capacity as an economic attaché, responsible mainly of actually the economic part of the role of the embassies, and that role actually is very wide and very important and very impactful. It's a role that actually um, um, that is key in terms of bridging between two sides that
Mm,
want to work together and need somebody to bring them together
mm,
somehow. So there are some gaps that a normal person wouldn't find any kind of benefit of of gaining from actually providing that service. So what we provide as a government entity is this kind of service that actually would allow always to put parties together, make them connect, and
mm,
always try to make the most of it. The crisis actually have affected our ability to actually to function in the best we can, because in order to do that, we always need to have some kind of funding, some resources, and some backup from the government back home, and to have a very clear strategy and very clear action plan in order to function and achieve our goals.
mm,
And the crisis have affected us at this level. But despite that, if you look at what we've done in the last 3 years, the effect actually was the effect of what we've done have been actually concrete. You
mm.
could see it, and we still managed to overcome all those problems to a large extent, and to turn that crisis to in some areas into an opportunity. So if you want me to tap a little bit more into uh, some details about that, I'm more than happy to do
Mhm.
it.
I do, and I think speaking to some of the key lessons learned, right, as we think about success under these very difficult conditions. When we were together in the embassy last, you spoke of hope, Abdallah, and you spoke of achieving these goals together and bringing people together to move forward, right? Why don't you share a little bit with us about your thoughts and takeaways from what you've been learning through the ongoing crisis, but then also in looking to how success is being defined, how in moving forward together will it be done, because it's being done now, right?
Yes, actually, it's being done now, and I really want. I'm sure. I mean, you have many of your students at Kelley Business School and other students listening to what I'm saying. I used to, when I was doing my MBA back a while ago, I used to go through some of the management books, and I used to feel understand it, but I never felt that I understood it until I started actually to face those kind of very tough environment. This is why you start to really understand what those words mean actually.
Hmm.
So I used to look at those very big books, and I used to feel that all the pages are really, really similar. So if you open any page, you always feel like in terms of organization management, all those kind of topics were very, very similar somehow. The only way where you could really start to feel the what those actually less what that means and when is it going to be practical is when you go through some kind of circumstances that makes you try to be more creative in what you're doing.
Mm,
So this is the key lessons of how to operate under in a crisis somehow, okay, in a very scarce resource scarce environment, and still achieve your goals if you want. Is first of all is to know to be very creative. You really
mm,
need to, and I'm not saying here something really really new, but I'm saying it out of experience.
mm,
You really need to think outside the box.
mm,
The model you use before the crisis is not the same business model you're going to use during the crisis.
mm,
You really need to know now that the source of funding is different. The stakeholders' importance have changed. the one who has a weight of 20% has now a weight of 50% in the new equation.
Mm.
And you really need to know who are the most important people for you to achieve those goals. And then you have to readjust all your time and all your focus based on that. So it's very important to be very flexible and understand the changing of the circumstances. And I started with that when I spoke about the exchange rate.
Mm-hmm.
There is no one formula. There is always a changing environment, and you always have to change based on that. So you always have to think outside. You have to think outside the box, and that actually doesn't mean necessarily that you will succeed. But when you think outside the box and you try, whenever you try, you start to learn.
Mm.
Other actually no, by tapping into that it didn't work, so that by elimination this is not the right way to do it. So you start to tap other doors and you try to put things together. To the other thing is, by tapping into those doors, and I'm going to talk about another lesson here, by tapping another those doors, you will realize that many of those doors are not open. They are really, really closed. And not because they don't want to cooperate, it's because it's not an interest for them. You really need to find that door where there is a mutual interest.
Mm.
And sometimes you have an interest, but the other party doesn't have an interest. And knocking on the door sometimes receive no replies, no interest, and you could be waiting sometimes a week or two or three or four by keep trying and trying, and you've got some objective and some targets to achieve sometimes, and you really and from that perspective you need to take some distance and be persistent, and that's very important. Persistence is key, but you have to be persistent without being actually pushy, and that's a
Mm.
big difference. Pushy will let people run away from you somehow, in my own view. But
Mm.
resistant means that you're really insisting, and you're insisting for a good cause. You're insisting because you think that there is a mutual benefit, and you really need to the other party to understand that by being persistent. So you've got to reformulate sometimes your message. You've got to choose the right timing. A no today could be a yes next week,
Mm.
because people also have their different kind of life, and this actually makes you get different answers at different times. We organized at the embassy a very beautiful fusion food event on the 8th of September, so last month. And I wanted to get a very big celebrity to the event, and I wanted the event to be interesting, not for the embassy, but for the people who are attending the event itself,
Mm.
and, to get some value out of it. So I was aiming for a very, very, if you want, a celebrity chef,
Mm.
to be there to talk to people about his experience, about how he's done it, how he started from somebody who was cooking, frying an egg in the kitchen, to somebody who has become so famous. What is a formula? What made him so successful? So I tapped into the door of a very famous chef, and the door was actually closed. And I tapped again after a week, and it was closed again. And then I received a message back from one of the staff of the chef telling me that, yeah, there is an interest and we would
Mm.
like to participate, but we would like to keep it discreet because we don't want the event to be all about that.
Mm.
And and by tapping few times into that door, knocking on that door, I felt that yes, persistence. And during the event, I met the daughter of the chef,
Mm.
and I told her, I hope you're going to learn from your dad how to cook, because he's a really famous and good cook. Do you know how to cook? And she told me, well, not much. I will never be good as a good cook as my dad. And what he told her, don't learn how to cook. Learn how to be persistent in the right way. So that actually tells you somehow that it's a very simple example, of course, but it tells you a lot about because by the end of the day, even the largest corporation in the world, they function based on human relations and all
Mm.
about relationship. It's all about how you can bring two countries that have been against each other for a very, very long time, or not working well together. When you change the people running the two countries, the whole dynamics of the relationship can change, because it's all about human relations at the end.
Mm.
I also, if I may here add something, after creativity, thinking about outside the box is and persistence without being pushy, and I insist on that. I could also think of, if you want, on credibility.
Mm.
You-
Absolutely. Always an important topic to discuss.
Yeah, credibility. And here I remember when I used to work I mean years ago, I used to be in West Africa,
Mm.
and I used to live there. I had my uncle, and we spoke. I was involved in some of import export activities,
Mhm.
and that I remember my uncle told me that be very careful what you're doing, because credibility is not something you can divide. You either have it or you don't have it.
Mm.
So money, you can divide it. If I give you a meal, you can divide it, but there is no half credible. You either credible or you're not credible. So people trust you or they don't trust you. Whenever you have some doubt in it, then there is no trust anymore. So I wanted here to say that in order to succeed in tough moments, you've got to be credible in good moments, in the good times. So people trust you. So if you've paid all your bills, then when the tough times comes, you will find people are going to help you, because you've been credible for a very, very long time. I'm giving that very little example to say that you could always bank on people if you've got a good history of credibility. There is always someone who's going to open the door for you. But if your credibility is not there, then people will only support you because of their own benefits only, not because they trust you. And if you are really short of money, short of resources, short of, I don't know, of anything that would allow you to achieve and move forward, if you're short of that, you will not find many people who are going to help you, because people aren't going to find any benefit in helping you. Your credibility in that situation is going to be your asset, your value, the one that you will be able to use to stand up again. And that's also very important. It's very challenging to build. And I'm not claiming I'm credible. I'm just stating that I try to be credible, as
Mhm.
credible as I can. So it's challenging to build, and it's also easy to destroy. You can destroy your credibility in one day after 10 years of work. Another thing, Tim, and I think I will try not to go even. I'm trying to take here the key lessons, if you want. After thinking outside the box, persistence, credibility, I think it's important uh, to always think, to work on your mindset somehow. And what I mean here is, I know there are so many books that talk about those kind of things, but I'm taking this out of my own experience purely. So you need to always think that you have to go toward peace, toward good relations. Sometimes things are not favorable in that direction. You always have to try to prioritize that aspect. And then when you have to go into other direction, then you will have to. So what I mean here, and the best way to build a good relation with any person or any nation is mainly through, in my view, is through economics.
Mm.
Good economics bring good relations. And when you have good trade between countries, you don't have wars, because they trade really, really well. The
Mm.
benefits will surmount, if you want, the risk of the war. So when this is why we say that when goods cross borders, weapon stops,
Mm.
because there is interest. It doesn't mean that it's true in the absolute meaning, but it's one of the factors, if you want, that push into that direction. Other factors probably push in an opposite direction. You won't see, even if you do that, you might get an opposite outcome because there are so many other things happening at the same time. But that specific aspect of trade is definitely one of the aspects that push in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
So by strengthening the relationship, economic relation between two countries, you are contributing even even if the amount of trade is very small, you are contributing gradually into a better relation between the two nations and less conflict.
Mm.
And by bringing people from the two nations together, you're definitely bringing more opportunities. So even in economic diplomacy, we have different ways of going about that. You could use tourism as a tool for economic diplomacy, and that some countries in the world have used it, even in the Middle East. Some large countries, like, for example, I will take an example, like Turkey.
Mm.
Tourism. Tourism, they open the country for tourism because tourism bring investment. Investment for the people who are visiting. So you visit the country, you like it, you enjoy the food, you have a good time, you feel like you want to buy an apartment there. And then you buy an apartment, you meet some people, oh, we could do a business together. And this create opportunities and help the country boom. So this kind of economic diplomacy is economic diplomacy of tourism. What I'm trying to say here is you've got to be clear and focused about what you want. Do you want people to come to Lebanon? I mean, Lebanon, to enjoy Lebanon, and then maybe they will love it so much that they will be happy to know some people more, elaborate on that relationship,
Mm.
build some kind of connections, trade, import, and export together, set up a business in a different country. Because as humans, we really need to interact and we want to work together, but we really need to feel comfortable in doing that and what the benefits is. So it's always important to put people together in a networking event. And I
Mm.
always believe in that very, very much. And during COVID, it was very difficult because we lost a very important aspects of our job
Mm.
to bring people together and to connect people together. And this is where opportunities actually arise mainly through those personal connections. Um, at some point in my career, I used to consider that the this I mean, if you go to an event and you want to know how successful your participation in that show or that conference was, and you want to set some kind of a criteria to say, okay, was I successful uh, during that day in that specific event? So one of the criteria I used to use, and I really don't know if it's really relevant, but was the amount of number of business cards that I got. And based on that, among the business cards, how many people after the show I remember?
Mm.
Because sometimes you can take 50 or 60 business cards, but then you don't remember the person even next day. So you know they took the business card and you try to think of who is that person. That means that the connection wasn't there.
Mm.
So the idea was to try to find a way to get the business card and remember the person on the business card. So try to find something in conversation that will let you remember that person.
Mm.
And by doing that, going back to that person will make the message you're going to send that person far more personalized because you remember the person. And that was actually, this is just an example of it's important also to not to underestimate the power of connecting people together,
Mm.
mainly if it's done in the right way. And I think those are the few lessons. If you want me, I will recap on that. I said thinking outside the box, being really persistent, being credible, also work toward peace and trade and economics that make people work together and be really focused on what you want to achieve.
Mm. Abdallah, thank you for all those lessons. You obviously have adopted a growth mindset, and I appreciate that so very much. As we work to help our students learn and grow, to have both a growth mindset, but also a global mindset, right? Because that is where we need to be as business educators of both now and in the future. And I appreciate so much you outlining these key opportunities for each of us to learn and grow. And I wish you and certainly the embassy, but also Lebanon, much success as you continue toward applying these lessons in the context of today's global economy. You inspire me, Abdallah. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. It's a great privilege for me to be on your show. And I was very happy when you contacted me to be on your show. I wish all your students at Kelley Business School best of success in their future. And hopefully they will also be able to come up with their own lessons from their own experience and pass it on to other people. Thank you very much, Tim.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, Abdallah. I look forward to our next discussion.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.